Welcome to our deep dive into Yuval Noah Harari's Nexus.
Yeah.
It's the thought-provoking sequel to his bestsellers, Sapiens and Homo Deus.
Right.
And today, we're going to kind of explore his central argument that humanity's ability to create these large, complex networks while giving us huge power also kind of predisposes us to use it unwisely.
It is, it's a fascinating paradox that he unpacks, especially as we enter, the age of AI, right?
Right.
He argues that our reliance on fictions and fantasies, these stories that we tell ourselves about the world, can blind us to the potential consequences of our actions.
Yeah, it reminds me of that ancient Greek myth about Phaethon, the son of the sun god Helios.
Right.
He begs his father to let him drive the sun chariot across the sky.
Yeah.
But he loses control and nearly destroys the earth.
Oh, yeah.
Is it the potent metaphor for humanity summoning powers we can't quite handle?
And Harari uses this myth to highlight a critical point. He suggests that this isn't just a problem with, individual psychology. It's a fundamental flaw in the way large networks operate.
Okay, let's dig into that. He starts Nexus with a question that really resonates. If we sapiens are so wise, why are we so self-destructive? I mean, look around, right?
Yeah.
We've made incredible advancements in science and technology, but we're also facing, existential threats like climate change and the potential dangers of uncontrolled AI.
Precisely. And Harari challenges a commonly held belief that he calls the naive view of information,
Right.
which suggests that more information automatically leads to better decisions and a brighter future.
Right.
He uses a powerful example from history to illustrate this point, the dramatic reduction in child mortality.
Right. He talks about Goethe, famous German writer, and how most of his siblings and even his own children died from diseases that are now easily preventable.
Right.
Only 3 out of 12 children in his family reached adulthood.
It's crazy.
It's a stark contrast to modern child mortality rates.
And on the surface, it seems like, a clear victory for the more information is better camp. We've gained knowledge about germs, developed vaccines, and implemented public health measures that have saved, countless lives.
Right.
But as Harari points out, this success story doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah.
Despite having access to more information than ever before, we're now facing a whole new set of existential threats. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, the potential for AI to run amok.
Right.
These are complex problems that require more than just information to solve.
It's not enough, right?
Exactly. And this is where the populist challenge comes in.
Okay.
Harari argues that populists see information not as a path to truth,
Right.
but as a weapon in a power struggle.
So instead of using information to make better decisions, they're using it to sow distrust and division.
Right. And Harari points out that this populist worldview manifests in 2 distinct ways.
Okay.
Radical empiricism, where people are encouraged to, do their own research.
Right.
And dismiss any information coming from, established institutions or experts.
Which can be so dangerous, especially when dealing with, complex scientific issues that require years of specialized knowledge to understand.
Absolutely. And the other manifestation is a reliance on divine revelation,
Right.
or the pronouncements of charismatic leaders who claim to have a direct line to truth.
Okay.
It's a rejection of evidence-based reasoning in favor of, blind faith.
It sounds like we're back to the myth of Phaethon, hoping that a god or a sorcerer will swoop in and fix everything.
Right.
And we all know how well that turned out.
Precisely. To understand how we got here, Harari takes us on this fascinating journey through the history of information networks, showing how large-scale institutions, from ancient kingdoms to modern states, have always relied on this delicate balance between myth makers and bureaucrats.
It's an interesting dynamic. He uses the Bible as an example, explaining that while the stories themselves were crucial for the spread of Christianity, it was the church bureaucrats who ensured those stories were, preserved, interpreted, and disseminated to the masses.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It highlights the often overlooked role of bureaucracy in shaping our understanding of the world. The stories we tell ourselves are important,
Right.
but the way those stories are curated, controlled, and disseminated has a huge impact on how they're received and interpreted.
Absolutely.
And this balance between mythology and bureaucracy has shaped the evolution of institutions throughout history.
Yeah.
Harari even argues that it can explain events like the split between the Catholic and Protestant churches, with each side vying for control over the narrative and the bureaucratic structures that support it.
This leads to another crucial concept that Harari explores: the idea of erroneous information and the importance of self-correcting mechanisms within these networks.
So how do institutions deal with misinformation or outright lies that inevitably creep into the system?
Harari compares institutions with weak self-correction mechanisms, like the Catholic Church during the Inquisition, with those that have strong self-correcting systems, like the scientific community.
Right. It's a fascinating contrast. He points out that while the church was incredibly resistant to any challenge to its authority, leading to events like the witch hunts and the persecution of Galileo, the scientific community, on the other hand, has developed a system of peer review, replication of experiments, and open debate that allows for the identification and correction of errors. But he also cautions that even strong self-correction can be destabilizing. You know, scientific revolutions can overturn long-held beliefs and lead to periods of uncertainty and upheaval.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always linear, and that the search for truth is an ongoing process.
And this brings us to another key distinction that Harari makes. The difference between distributed and centralized information networks. He connects this to different political systems, arguing that democracies tend towards distributed networks with a free flow of information. While totalitarian regimes rely on centralized networks where information is tightly controlled and dissent is suppressed. He uses this framework to explain the divergent paths of the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The U.S., with its emphasis on free speech and a decentralized media landscape, fostered a more dynamic and resilient information network, while the Soviet Union's centralized control ultimately led to stagnation and collapse.
And this brings us to the elephant in the room, AI. Harari emphasizes that AI is unlike any previous information technology because it has the potential to make decisions and create new ideas independently.
It can think for itself.
He even goes so far as to say, AI isn't a tool, it's an agent.
Wow.
This shift from organic to inorganic information networks is a game changer. We're no longer just talking about humans sharing information with each other. We're talking about silicon chips with processing power that dwarfs our own, capable of analyzing vast data sets and drawing conclusions that we might never even consider.
So we're already outmatched in a way.
And Harari provides some chilling examples from recent history of how algorithms are already impacting human behavior, like the role of social media in inciting ethnic violence in Myanmar. It's a stark reminder of the power these inorganic networks already wield, even in their infancy. And as AI continues to evolve, this power is only going to grow exponentially.
So the question becomes, can we handle this power wisely? Or are we, as Harari suggests, creating another Phaethon, summoning a force that could ultimately consume us?
It's a question that haunts Harari throughout Nexus, this tension between our remarkable ability to create these powerful networks and our tendency to get entangled in the very fictions that those networks are built on.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up Nexus as like, you know, a continuation of this line of thinking, because in his previous book, Homo Deus, Harari warned that information technology, while promising us health and happiness, could end up taking power away from us. He used this like really striking image of humans dissolving within like a torrent of information, like a clump of earth in a raging river.
Yes, and what's fascinating is that in the years since Homo Deus was published, the pace of change has like only accelerated. Many of those scenarios that felt like science fiction back then, you know, like algorithms creating our AI, making life or death decisions, are now part of our reality.
It's almost like we're living in a real-time science fiction novel where the plot twists keep coming faster and faster.
And one of those plot twists is the populist challenge to this naive view of information that we were talking about earlier. Harari argues that this worldview is shaping how we interact with information in a really profound way.
You know, we touched on this, in the first part, but it's worth diving deeper. You mentioned that populists see information as a weapon in a power struggle. They distrust institutions like, governments, the media, even science, claiming that these elites are spreading disinformation to maintain their control.
Exactly. It creates this us versus them mentality where any information coming from, those in power is automatically suspect. And this can be incredibly corrosive because it undermines the very foundations of a functioning society.
So how do populists reconcile this idea that information is a weapon with their own claims to truth?
Yeah.
If they distrust all official sources, like, how do they decide what to believe?
Harari points out that they navigate this in a couple of ways.
Okay.
One path is through this idea of radical empiricism.
Okay.
You know, it's this idea that that only personal experience is valid, that everyone should, you know, do their own research,
right,
and reject any knowledge coming from you know, experts or institutions.
But, you know, how can any individual be expected to conduct like the kind of research needed to understand complex global issues like climate change or pandemics? You know, these are issues that require years of, you know, specialized knowledge and training.
It's a valid point, and that's where this approach can be so misleading. While claiming to be scientific and empowering, it ultimately leads to the belief that there is no objective truth, that everyone's opinion is equally valid.
Which, of course, is incredibly dangerous because it creates a situation where evidence and facts become irrelevant.
Exactly. And the other path that Harari identifies is a return to divine revelation,
right,
or reliance on charismatic leaders who claim to have a direct line to truth. Instead of engaging with evidence or scientific reasoning, they appeal to faith, tradition, or emotional appeals.
Almost like a retreat from the complexities of the modern world into like a simpler, more black and white worldview.
It's a seductive idea, especially in times of uncertainty and upheaval.
Right.
You know, people crave easy answers and a sense of certainty.
Right.
And these populist leaders offer that, even if it means, you know, sacrificing truth and reason in the process.
It's a dangerous gamble, as Harari points out, especially when we're facing these, like, you know, existential threats that demand clear thinking and evidence-based solutions. We can't simply, you know, abdicate responsibility and hope for a divine intervention or a charismatic leader to swoop in and save the day.
And that brings us back to this fundamental question that Harari grapples with throughout Nexus.
Right. Can we as a species develop a more nuanced and sophisticated relationship with information?
Right.
Can we move beyond this binary between, you know, the naive view and the populist weaponization of information?
It seems like an almost impossible task, especially in our current climate of, you know, information overload and hyperpolarization.
It's certainly a challenge, but Harari doesn't leave us without without hope. He argues that the key lies in cultivating a deep understanding of how information networks operate.
Yeah.
Both their potential and their pitfalls.
Right.
We need to develop you know, a critical awareness of how these networks shape our perceptions, our beliefs, and ultimately our actions.
So it's not just about consuming more information.
Right.
It's about understanding the context, the motivations, and the potential biases behind the information we encounter.
Exactly. We need to become more discerning consumers of information.
Yeah. Asking critical questions, seeking out diverse perspectives, and challenging our own assumptions. And we need to do this, you know, collectively, recognizing that the information ecosystem we inhabit is a shared responsibility.
It's about building a more resilient and truth-seeking information culture,
right,
where we value evidence over ideology and critical thinking over blind faith.
And this is where Harari's insights about, you know, the balance between mythology and bureaucracy, the importance of self-correcting mechanisms, and the differences between distributed and centralized networks become so crucial.
Because, you know, understanding how these systems operate, you know, both historically and in the present day,
right,
can give us the tools to navigate this increasingly complex information landscape.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that that information is never neutral, that it's always embedded within a network of power, influence, and competing narratives.
Right.
And it's only by understanding these dynamics that we can hope to harness the power of information for good, rather than allowing it to be used against us.
So as we enter this new era of artificial intelligence, where the lines between, you know, human and machine intelligence are becoming increasingly blurred, these insights feel more urgent than ever.
Absolutely, because AI has the potential to both amplify and disrupt existing power structures to either reinforce or challenge the narratives that shape our world. Right. And the choices we make now about how we develop and deploy these technologies will have profound consequences for the future of humanity.
So, we've been exploring Yuval Noah Harari's Nexus and this idea that humanity's ability to create these, large, powerful networks has given us, immense power,
right,
but perhaps also, predisposes us to misuse it.
Right.
And now we're facing this new frontier of artificial intelligence, which, could either exacerbate that tendency or offer a path to more enlightened future.
What strikes me about Nexus is that Harari doesn't just lay out the potential dangers of this new information age, right?
Right.
He also provides like a framework for navigating it, a roadmap, for understanding the forces at play and the choices we face.
So where does that roadmap lead?
Yeah.
What can we do, as individuals and as a society to ensure that we use this power wisely and don't repeat the mistakes of the past?
Harari emphasizes the need for critical thinking, skepticism,
right,
and a commitment to truth.
Right.
He argues that we need to be, discerning consumers of information, constantly questioning our assumptions and seeking out diverse perspectives.
It's about recognizing that information is never neutral.
Right.
That it's always shaped by the networks it flows through, the institutions, the algorithms, the cultural biases that influence how we interpret the world around us.
Exactly. We need to develop a critical awareness of those networks, understanding how they influence our perceptions and beliefs.
Yeah.
Harari reminds us that the most important information isn't necessarily the most dramatic or the most entertaining, but rather the information that helps us to understand the deep structures of reality.
So it's not just about consuming more information. It's about consuming it intelligently. It's about, being active participants in the information ecosystem rather than passive recipients of whatever algorithms decide to feed us.
Right. We need to be aware of the potential for manipulation, both by human actors and by increasingly sophisticated AI systems.
Right.
Harari points out that propaganda in the 21st century won't try to control what people think. It will try to control what people think about.
It's about controlling the agenda, shaping the very questions we ask and the information we deem relevant.
Right.
And that's where, critical thinking becomes so essential. It's about developing, the ability to step back from the information stream and ask, who benefits from this narrative?
Yeah.
What voices are being silenced or marginalized?
Exactly. And Harari argues that this kind of critical awareness is essential if we want to harness the power of AI for good.
Right.
He writes, the real question facing us isn't, will AI outsmart us, but what will happen when AI becomes better than us at understanding ourselves?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The idea that AI could become so adept at analyzing, our data, our preferences, our biases, that it could manipulate us in ways we can't even fathom.
It's a possibility we need to take seriously, and Harari suggests that the antidote to this potential dystopian scenario lies in building a more human-centric approach to AI, one that prioritizes our values, our well-being, and our autonomy.
So instead of simply asking what can AI do,
right,
we need to ask what do we want AI to do.
Yes.
And we need to have those conversations now before these technologies become so embedded in our lives that we lose the ability to shape their development.
Precisely. Harari argues that the future isn't something that simply happens to us. It's something we create through the choices we make and the actions we take.
And that's where, his insights about, the balance between myth makers and bureaucrats, the importance of self-correcting mechanisms, and the tension between distributed and centralized networks becomes so crucial.
Because understanding how information networks have operated throughout history can give us the tools to shape the information networks of the future.
Right.
We need to design systems that encourage transparency, accountability, and a diversity of perspective.
We need to create safeguards against, manipulation and disinformation, both by, human actors and by AI systems. And we need to ensure that these technologies are used to empower individuals, not to control or exploit them.
It's a tall order, but as Harari reminds us, the stakes are incredibly high. The future of our species may depend on our ability to navigate this information age wisely and with a deep sense of our shared humanity.
So, dear listener, we leave you with this question. What role will you play in shaping the future of information?
Right.
Will you be a force for truth, connection, and understanding?
Yeah.
Or will you succumb to the siren call of division, delusion, and control? The choice, as always, is yours.
Harari's Nexus is a powerful call to action, a challenge to engage with the complexities of our interconnected world and to strive for a future where information empowers us rather than enslaves us. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
We hope this deep dive into Nexus has given you some food for thought and perhaps even inspired you to pick up the book yourself. We encourage you to join the conversation, to share your insights, and to help shape the future of information in a way that benefits all of humanity.